All right, so I've been talking about this for a while, so I'm going to quickly show you my profile, and then I'm going to show you how the content gets generated. So what we can do is go up here and download our file, and it's Markdown or PDF. I honestly prefer to do a Markdown file. It's a little easier for me, as well. It's extremely easy for AI, and it's also a smaller file. And then we're going to dig in, and we're going to go right to a blank Claude chat, right? Here's the Claude chat, and it's going to be something where it's expunged of the personal information that I would have about me, right? Or yeah, we're going to use me as an example. And so personal information about me is technically removed. And all it is a blank chat that says, write a LinkedIn prompt about the importance of brand authenticity for entrepreneurs. And then I also wanted to do was put final file in a markdown artifact for me to read. And so I'm going to quickly submit that. And, it's cool because we actually get to see Opus 4.7 at work, which I really do love. And it gets right to authoring and building out my content. We're going to quickly review it. We'll read it. It's present in our file for us. And here we go. The most underrated growth strategy being yourself. I've watched countless entrepreneurs pour thousands into rebrands, taglines, overhauls, and copying whoever's trending on LinkedIn this week. Meanwhile, the founders who quietly outlast them are doing something far less glamorous. They're just being honest about who they are. Here's what I've learned about brand authenticity after years in the trenches. Your audience can smell a performance from a mile away. Your quirks are your moat. Authenticity scales better than you think. Professional is not the opposite of real. And then the entrepreneurs I admire most aren't chasing a polished persona. They're building something that actually sounds like them in their emails, their products, their pitches, their LinkedIn posts. And the wild part, that's the thing that compounds. Your brand doesn't need to be louder. It needs to be truer. What's one thing about your business that you've been hiding because it doesn't feel on brand? And so this is a decent piece of content. I will not lie and say that it's bad. I will say that it's not me. And I think that's the most important thing that we talk about. I would find that I have to do a lot of editing. And so now we're going to go into my own personal brand new project. And I want it to be fair where I have another personal project file that has a lot more about me, resumes, experiences, additional writings, but I wanted to give it close to a one-to-one where the only difference is me adding that downloaded profile that we had talked about. And so here goes that brand new premium profile. I am Glenn Perry as the Markdown. And so I do have an instruction here, and everyone that gets it also has this instruction because this instruction anchors it to your brand new 72 archetype assessment. And so I will highlight that there's an instruction here to tell AI how to leverage that. And so same post. Write a LinkedIn post about the importance of brand authenticity for entrepreneurs. Put final file in a markdown artifact for me to read. And so we're going to go ahead and process this. And one of the unique things about it is I love when I'm looking at the notes from AI as it's processing and it's thinking, is that it'll highlight what it's reading under that markdown file, that project. And so it's looking at the post structure with revolutionary framing, um, and here we go. Um, LinkedIn posts brand authenticity for entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs are chasing the wrong kind of authenticity. They've been told to just be yourself online, share the messy behind the scenes, post the real you, and then they wonder why their brand feels inconsistent. Why some weeks they sound like a strategist and other weeks like a wellness influencer. Authenticity isn't self-expression, it's self-alignment. The difference matters. Self-expression stays whatever is true in the moment. Self-alignment, ask a harder question. What is true about me across every moment? And how does that translate into how I show up? When I work with founders, I see the same pattern. Their brand feels off, not because they're lying, but because they haven't done the work. And so I want to say that this one is a really good start. I usually don't operate with bullet points. I usually do freehand paragraph and sentence by sentence, and then cascade down from a context framework to developing and making my point across. And so what is important here is that this then also highlights a few notes on how they shaped it. The opening leads with my revolutionary, and that's me challenging the conventional of just be yourself. Advice rather than reinforcing it. Your analyst then does the work of drawing a clean distinction, and that's that expression versus alignment, because that reframe is where the post earns the reader's attention. The middle section is your builder. offering a framework people can actually use. And the close question is your worker, bringing it back to the reader's own situation rather than ending on a declaration. Though it's important for you to know that my worker is my social. It's one of my top socials. And so I use work and I socially connect with people by being the worker. And so it highlights that and makes sure that that shows up. To keep it to roughly 280 words, which sits in the sweet spot for LinkedIn thought leadership. No M dashes per your standing preference. If you want a second variant, I can push in a different direction, more contrarian, more story driven, opening with a specific founder moment, or more framework heavy, naming 3 or 4 alignment diagnostics. And so what's important is that it knows me and knows how to better cater to my needs. I want to go back to here. What Claude gave was just a post and then a quick note. Here's your LinkedIn post. It delivers 4 punchy lessons, ends with an engagement question to drive comments. Let me know if you'd like a different angle. And so that's it. It has no context on where it wants to go or how it wants to go. This one gives you a lot more context and it understands me and therefore it outputs me at that time. And so another thing that I want to quickly get to is, when you're in your profile, we're going to go to the content gen. And when you're in the content gen, we're going to go back and I can go and generate content. And then I'm going to click it to be a LinkedIn post. And I can generate content ideas, but I can also do and enter a topic manually. And so I'm just going to quickly copy this and post this in here manually. And there's some extra options on if I want to use emojis. Do I want to use hashtags? Let's click off hashtags. Do I want to use M dashes and do I want to have a call to action? I'm gonna click off the call to action and then I'm going to match it to the platform tone. And then my content balance, I want it to be balanced. And then I don't want to use emojis. And so every time you post, you get 50 credits, but you post and I just hit generate one piece and it's now calculating. We get our results back. Content generated, successfully generated one piece of content. I want to be very mindful that I have a content library and it has 112 pieces of content, variations between different platforms. But here we have LinkedIn and I'm going to go in here and, the topic was write a LinkedIn post about the importance of brand authenticity for entrepreneurs. And so this one, just be yourself, is the most expensive advice in branding. It sounds liberating. It's actually a trap. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Authenticity without architecture is just unfiltered noise. And the market doesn't reward noise, no matter how genuine it is. Look at the difference between two entrepreneurs with identical values, identical expertise, identical desire to show up authentically. One post consistently attracts aligned clients, commands premium. The gap isn't authenticity. Both are real. The gap is the system. The first entrepreneur understands this neurological wiring. The specific patterns their brain uses to process information, build trust. They build from it. The second is performing a version of authenticity they saw work for someone else. That's not self-expression. That's borrowed behavior wearing a genuine face. True brand authenticity isn't about feeling aligned. It's about building from your actual cognitive architecture, then letting the system do what feelings never could. Feelings fluctuate, systems compound. So I'd like to say that this is very accurate to where I am, but I want to be mindful that we talked about where it hits and miss, and there's some things that are missing in here. But the more important thing is that I can do several things with this tool. I can go ahead and edit the content, and I can kind of see this really nice preview for it. But I also have this ability to go ahead and start tweaking things. And so I can look at the viral aspects of it and I can boost this for virality. I can change my tone. So maybe I want to be a little more authoritative or I wanted this to be urgent. I have these options to create variations. I have an ability to calculate a score once there's a new version out. There's the synergy check based off of my archetypes, and then I can give some guided prompts on what I wanted to do. I think the most important thing for me is I want this to be boosted for virality and I want this to be aggressive. I want, 50 people. That's a really high number for me on LinkedIn, but I want this to be boosted for the virality options and it's still aligned to me. And I think the most important thing is it's still referencing that large profile that I showed you earlier, those 30,000 words. It's pulling those things out and then referencing them to boost the virality. And then I would also probably want to, I don't want to do tone, but one of the really cool things that I really love is the variance, right? There's the different ways for us to go look at something. We can see the content optimized for virality with an 88% score now. And so here we go looking at it. I've watched brilliant entrepreneurs do single posts every day for 2 years and make zero from it. That's very true. I've also watched someone post 3 times a week and get 20,000 clients on repeat. Another thing that's true. The difference wasn't talents. It wasn't niche. It wasn't even audience side. It was this. Just be yourself is the most expensive advice ever given in branding. And most of you are still paying for it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Nobody in personal branding space will say out loud. Authenticity without architecture is just expensive noise. Boy, does this sound like me. And so I really want to highlight some things. What they highlight is that they start to give out graphics to make this more viral. They highlight what entrepreneur A would do, and entrepreneur B would do, and then it kind of tells a story. And so this feels a little longer, but I really do like it. And I think that it'll resonate with my audience. Here's some other things that it does. It highlights that it's doing some tactics that's applied. It's doing a delayed payoff structure, so on and so forth. So the most important thing is giving you some rationale behind why these things are happening and what decisions are being made. And then the rationale is that the original post had a genuinely strong idea, but buried its hook and moved too quickly to abstraction, so on and so forth. Spare you guys the details, but this is more of how the tool works, because I think what's important is I did not have to spend that time editing it myself. And so here's a longer post, but I really do like the visual structure of it. It's easier to read on social media, especially for LinkedIn. It does a really good job of allowing you to follow that flow. And it's interesting because it built the anchor based off of an idea, and then it ties it back into the algorithms for the platform. And so what I can do is then, go up here and I can like this, and then I can also copy this, go to LinkedIn and paste it in. What I'm going to quickly show you is back to when we generate things. I quickly glossed over this, but when you select a platform, you get to choose what platform you want. So Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, email, blogs. And so what we could do is kind of choose what they are. Do I want to do a post? Do I want to do carousel? Post for Facebook, reel script, a group post, YouTube. Is it a video script that's 8 to 10 minutes long? Or is it short scripts, Instagram captions and reel scripts and carousels? And Twitter, is it a thread or is it a single post? Email, is it a newsletter or is it promotional? Blog, is it an article or is it a how-to guide? You select these, and you can choose as many as you want to. Um, but once you see them, they're highlighting that there's all of these variations behind it. And then I'd have to choose a cool thing where I can actually generate a content topic. And what it'll do is give me 5 suggestions for what that content could be based off of, I just don't know what I want to talk about today, but I know that I need to post something, and give me some ideas based off of me, my profile. And I'll also show you a little thing about how this actually caters to your profile of your business needs and some other variables. So here we got that there's a 97th fit, the neuroscience of borrowed identity, why your brain defaults to performing someone else's brand, and the systematic method to rewiring it. The 1 in 572 trillion. Again, it knows me. I put in some things that it knows about me and the business that I have. So it's always representing me. The 5 stages of architecture of the convergence. This is the methodology that I built brand new off of. Your archetype combination. Again, back to archetypes and me. Perform brand versus express brand. And so I can choose whichever one of these are. Let's say if we pick this one, because this is a 98% fit, and the neuroscience of the borrowed identity. And so what it'll highlight is that it's going to make a total of 14 pieces. This is important because this is 14 pieces, which means 14 credits. Again, you get 50 per month to automatically use. And so you have credits and you instantly get this posted, and I would generate 14 pieces. I'm going to not click that button because I don't actually want that content. I've got a lot of content already, and generating another 14 pieces is futile. But again, I have 912 credits because it's me. I have content library. This week, I have 6 content posts, and then there's some extra things that it has. It has content memory about me, learned off of a post that I've approved. In this library, I go to my library and I prove things that I like and that are favorable and things that performed well on social media. And then it's always going to update based off of the things that performed well well in the direction I want to go. It's responsive to that, right? And so it sees that I like the short paragraph style, I like a sophisticated vocabulary, and then my style emojis. I do like emojis, CTAs, and hashtags. And then the signature phrase, here's going to come from truth, reality, real opportunity. And so another thing that's important is that there's a content profile that I had to fill out. And that content profile has 3 steps to it. What is my, tell me about the business? What is my audience? What is my core offering? So it knows what that product is. What are my content goals? And then what makes me different? I then have the opportunity to kind of choose some things about voice calibration, whether I'm formal or casual, serious or playful, reserved or enthusiastic, authoritative or collaborative, and then traditional or modern. And then advanced personality settings for being a beginner to whether I'm subtle or I'm scroll stopping. And then the last part is me just choosing these content pillars. These content pillars are created from another tool that we have, and that's called the brand journey, which then extracts who you are, builds out an ideology of what your brand is, and then you get these content pillars. And I choose between 3 or 5. I always go for 5 because I have a lot of things to talk about and a lot of interests. We then have the visual vibe aesthetic, whether that's me professional and corporate or creative and artistic. I like to keep it professional. I also like to keep it edgy, and so sometimes I'll switch between them. Here's a writing example that I provided, and then there's some content constraints that I really wanted it to know. And then if I do a CTA, what are the things that I'm asking people for? Book a call, read more, get started, join a community. And then I hit that complete setup, and then it will save all of those files for me. Last thing is that, you can set up campaigns for what you're trying to do, and content will be anchored to that. You also have a scheduler, so you can schedule the content that you have and what are upcoming posts. And then we have settings. And so this is your content settings where you can say that I want it to be anchored to a personal style, which is anchored based off of writing examples. You want to use a brand new style, which is what AI is looking at based off of your archetypes and then meeting it to the needs of the platform that you're delivering, or you want to do a blend. And this is just to give people a little more flexibility on what works for them. And then we get to choose what audience sophistication is. And that's that technical depth and complexity where we can choose them to be beginner or are they expert. And then hook intensity. I am always looking for scroll stopping. I don't imagine why anybody would want subtle, but it's important for me to give options for people. And then there's the anti-voice constraints, things that I never wanted to use that I can add, as well as writing samples. And so this is the biggest difference. I think that important for you to see the difference between the 3 different versions, right? Here's the default without any context based off of the system. Here's the version that has context and has that 30,000 profile. And then here's that larger version that has all of the extra things about me. It's pulled in and it automatically writes that content. I'm gonna go right to it. And so we have that post and it's now saved and it's pending. And now I can choose those things to be scheduled or approved, or if I archived or I delete it. And that is the difference between it. What you'll see is that the new version built inside, it took under a minute. It didn't edit, too many words. It sounded like me because the AI knows me, same tool, same topic, completely different output. And so I want to tell you that you can spend a few hours, doing it the old way, or you could save a lifetime. You saw the full picture. AI is the yes man, right? The market can't fix it because every tool assumes you already know who you are. And the depth it takes to actually solve this is a 572 trillion combinations and that 30,000 words of identity mapped to your exec wiring. So there's 3 ways to get started. I have a system that's 197 for the system. You pay it and you get that full archetype result. You take the assessment and you get that full profile. And you can instantly get started because you click download and you throw that into Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or whatever tool you want to use. There's a lot of people using it for different tools. And my goal was not to be system agnostic, but to allow for freedom for where you are that you need to meet it. The other thing is that I am hosting live events, as I'm calling the live intensive for brand new, for helping people build their brand anchored to this tool, right? I want you to be able to take your assessment, meet with me, we discuss it, and then we look at how do you really flesh out your brand beyond just your voice, but what is your missions? What are your goals? What are your visions? And using AI as a partner to do that. And so I'm hosting that in Austin, and I plan to do that in many other cities. And so then we have the 997 that I have, which is this full identity calibration with a year of support and community access. And so links are below. And if you want, you can book a free 15-minute discovery call if you want to talk through it. I'm Kirk Perry. This is BNA 72. Again, not magic, a mirror. Thanks for watching.